Good afternoon and welcome to the latest in our series of live employer webinars on the Hertfordshire Opportunities portal. That's www.hopinto.co.uk. My name is Gareth Dace and I work for the Hertfordshire Local Enterprise Partnership. We're an organisation working with 106 Hertfordshire schools to help students gain a greater insight into future careers in the industries that are important to us in Hertfordshire. We encourage you all to have a look at the HOP website, which is www.hopinto.co.uk. That contains a wealth of information, including live job vacancies, labour market information within Hertfordshire, and you'll also be able to look back at any of the previous webinars that we've been running over the last 5 or 6 weeks here, including the video that we're recording today that will go out a little bit later today. So any of your family and friends that may be interested, you can show them this site here at the moment. It's very much something that we would encourage you to be using. So you can see on your screen there what the slide looks like. The slide you're seeing at the moment is some specific information about today's feature, which is careers in medicine. And you'll see from this page there is a variety of information about the sorts of opportunities that are available, salaries and other entry routes. But we're going to explore all of those today. So today's focus is on careers on medicine, and I'm delighted that we have got a real life doctor. He's Dr. Michael Hart, a junior doctor from the Lister Hospital, who will, I have absolutely no doubt, will inspire you today to pursue careers within medicine and to become a doctor. He's got a fascinating story to tell you, and that will come up as we go through the webinar today. Quite clearly, there'll always be a huge demand for doctors in the healthcare industry, and Hertfordshire as a county and a region is no different from any others. Just to let you know, there are over 3,000 doctors currently in occupation in jobs within Hertfordshire. That's either through doctors in GPs, in NHS trusts, or in dental surgeries as well. Just to cover a little bit of housekeeping for you today. So just to reassure you all, there are currently 66 of you watching at the moment who have registered with us, but that number probably will go up a little bit as we go through, because we had 86 of you register. All of you are students from schools in Hertfordshire, or most be. So most of this information will be generally about careers in medicine, but we may feature on some specifics in Hertfordshire that HOP will provide you with afterwards as well. But just to reassure you, we can't see or hear any of you, but hopefully you can see and hear us. There are ways for you to interact though, and we very much encourage you to interact, and I'm sure when you hear Dr. Michael speaking, you will want to ask him lots of questions. So the way that you do that is through the questions tab on your dashboard. So if you click on that where it says questions, it will open up a tab, and you'll have the opportunity in there to ask a question, to type your question in. That will only be visible to me, and then I will direct the questions to Michael as we go through. I'm expecting there's going to be lots of questions coming in from you today that will probably cover quite a few different areas. So I'll try and ask these as directly as I can for you. I won't name you when I ask the questions, but I will try and ask them all directly as I can. It may be that there's a few of them that are either very, very similar or exactly the same. So I might just join a few questions up together and put them all to Michael, so there's some sort of form of logical sequence to what we're doing today. The other thing that will be going on today, I'm just going to launch the first one of these now, is we're going to put some polls up as we go through. Now this will help us gauge a bit more of an understanding about you and your motivations for being on here, and it will also tell us whether you found this session to be useful or not as well. So I'm going to put a question up here at the moment. It just requires you to click one answer. I'm going to leave this up here for about 60 seconds or so, so you should just be able to answer this once. And this is just asking you what your level of interest in going into a career in medicine actually is. So is it something you definitely want to do and you kind of feel that you know all the information that you know already, but this is just, I guess, to reassure you and to add a bit of icing on the cake of that one? Or is it something that you definitely want to do but you really feel that you want to know more about it? Or perhaps it's something you think you might be interested in, is the third option. And then the fourth one is it's not really something that you've considered, but people keep telling you, maybe your teachers, maybe family, friends keep saying to you, look, you should really be thinking about this as a career. And this will help us pitch this session to you. So getting some good responses in there now. For you, okay, I'm going to close this after 60 seconds and I will tell Michael the results of this one, and this will help him. So thank you for those of you that have voted. So what it can tell us, Michael, is that of the people that have responded to this one, about a quarter of them definitely want this career and think that they're roughly happy with the information they've got about it already. Just over half of the people that have responded to this poll, though, think it's definitely something they want to do, but they don't know enough about the journey they've got to take, which is exactly why we've got you on at the moment. So without any further ado, let me introduce you to Dr. Michael Hart from the Lister Hospital in Stevenage. It's an absolute pleasure to have you with us today, Michael. My first question for you, though, and this is a phrase I've already used quite interchangeably. What's the difference between studying for medicine and becoming a doctor?
That's a good question, Gareth. Just hi everyone, thank you for having me on here to talk to you guys, and I hope you guys will find this useful, and feel free to ask whatever you want. I've heard all the questions from students that I can, so please do drop a message. In terms of being a doctor and going into medicine can sometimes be used interchangeably, as well as studying for medicine and being a doctor. What I can say is that the medical field is huge, something that is massive, that encompasses people from all walks of life going into all different kinds of careers with all different kinds of jobs. So going into medicine can mean going in for working in a hospital, or working in the community, or working in research. But generally, people would say that they will study medicine or be a doctor, and to be a doctor you have to study medicine, specifically medicine, at a medical school. Lots of degrees have similar names and titles. You have maybe biomedical sciences, but to become a doctor you'd need to study medicine and a medical degree.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you for explaining that. That helps to paint that picture a little bit more. Just from a personal level, when did you know you wanted to be a doctor?
So this is always a good question to ask. I would say from when I was quite a young age. This might sound odd, but I was really interested in art. I really liked drawing and sketching and painting, and the main thing that I really liked drawing were other people. I found drawing other people and portraits and drawing the human body one of my favorite things to do. I did a lot of kind of cartoon work when I was growing up, and so I found the human body really interesting, and I found it really interesting in terms of an art point of view, and I found it really interesting from a science point of view. And so while I was in school, I was kind of interested in that. And then as a more kind of personal story, while I was in school, I had a grandmother who was very sick, and she came to live with my family, and my dad would be the sole carer of her, and my dad and my grandmother, like, unsurprisingly, they were Chinese. If you can see me, then I am also Chinese, and neither of them spoke English very, very well. So whenever my grandmother used to go to the hospital, she would be very ill but couldn't speak any Chinese, so therefore couldn't speak any English, so I would go as a translator. And so this was my first kind of contact with doctors. She was in and out of hospital all the time. She was very, very ill. The thing you need to know about my grandmother, though, is that I hated my grandmother. She was a really horrible person. She was mean, and she was rude. She was really racist. She was really just like a nasty person that she was just a grumpy old lady, is how I would describe her. But she was my grandmother. And these doctors would see her each time she would come in, and she would be horrible, but they'll treat her because that's what they're meant to do. That's their job. No matter if they like you or they don't like you, you're nice or you're not nice. These people were amazing at helping this woman, no matter how angry she was or how rude she was. They did an amazing job looking after her. And so that's when I realized that's something to be proud of as your job. If you could do that, no matter who comes in, you will help them. And so I realized from then that this could be a pretty good career to be in. And so with that and my love for sciences and generally for what exactly makes the human body work or not work in medicine, I think that's kind of what got me involved.
Yeah, well, that's a really good answer, and we'll focus a little bit more on some of those areas that you just brought up as we go on. We've had a couple of questions that have come in already. They're both about your career and academically the route that you take. So I'm going to pick those up in a little while, but please keep the questions coming in. I'm also aware a couple of you are saying that you don't know how to use the poll. Unfortunately, this is a very, very new thing to us that we've got the poll on here as well. So we need to have a play around with it. About 60% of people voted on the last poll. There's a couple more that will come on. So we'll just use it as a bit of trial and error. Don't worry too much if you can't use it at the moment. But Michael, just to let you know as well, to a bit of background knowledge from the poll that we just put on there about how well informed the attendees feel they know about careers in medicine at the moment. The majority have clicked 3, so on a scale of 1 to 5. So 45% said that they're sort of somewhere in the middle. 36% have ticked 4, which is that they think they know quite a bit about it. So that's probably where the majority are pitched today. Right, but you know, I'm going to go straight into some of the questions that are coming in because they're better than the ones that I've prepared at the moment. So this question that's coming in is, what type of doctor are you and what area have you gone into mainly? I think that's a good one to set the scene, isn't it?
Sure. So I am currently a academic foundation doctor. So if any of you who know the medical scheme quite well, when you finish medical school, you become a foundation doctor for 2 years, where you rotate between 6 specialties. I, however, and then after that, you'd pick a specialty. I, however, have picked an academic foundation program. So I'm rotating between 5 specialties and I'm specializing in one area of research. And my area of research is medical education. So my specialty in terms of what I do, along with my work, I can spend part of my time working and in terms of the hospital medicine, and the other part of my time I do researching and teaching. So that's my main specialty. And then where I would like to go into is that I would like to become a surgeon, and more specifically a plastic surgeon. So if you kind of think of my interest in both art and medicine, I actually ended up getting a degree in both art history and medicine, and I've kind of combined them together, and I'm looking into plastic surgery as a specialty, and as well as teaching in universities. And after this 2 years of foundation program, I'm actually going into a plastic surgery fellowship next year.
Okay, all right, that's very interesting, journey that you've had already, and you've obviously got that vision for where you want to take that in the future. And I guess from from the conversation we had earlier is that when you're someone, and probably you tell me a lot of your peers are the same, that once you graduate and you qualify, that's only the start of the journey really for you, isn't it?
Absolutely. There's so much more. There's so many options and so many directions that you can take, that having a medical degree is really just the beginning. Everyone kind of has it as a baseline, and then from there they go off into a huge range of different job choices and options, and there's so many things for so many different kinds of people that honestly you could be any kind of person, and you would find a job as a doctor sort of anywhere.
Yeah, well, we're going to explore some of those stages along the way as we go on. There are quite a few questions coming in about subjects and particular qualifications that you need. So if I ask you the question that will sort of wrap around a few of these questions, which subjects must you study at school?
So for most of you, I'm not sure exactly where you are, but I think you're roughly around about your GCSE times. Most of you should be thinking about what sciences you can take. So from your GCSEs, if you are still at the beginning of them, you should be taking at least double award, if not triple award sciences. And then you should be thinking about going on to your science A levels. Now, it depends where you apply, but I would recommend trying to pick A levels that will give you the most amount of choices everywhere in all of the UK medical schools. So there are about 30-ish medical schools in the UK, all have their own requirements. Over 90% of those medical schools will ask for A-level chemistry. So no matter a shadow of a doubt, please take A-level chemistry. It is one of the most difficult A-levels. It's one of the most challenging A-levels. It's got a good basis in what the fundamental sciences are like, and so you have to take it. Over half, maybe about 50, 60, 70% of medical schools will ask for biology as well. Odd that if you're going into medicine, more would ask for chemistry than will ask for biology, but it's the way it is. I would say that it is also really important to take biology, but not as important as chemistry. Ideally take both, and then you should take at least, or hopefully at least, a third science. Now that would be either physics or maths. If you take chemistry or biology and then one of physics or maths, you are pretty much set for any UK medical school that you would want to go to. You do not need to take all sciences. You don't need to take all sciences and double maths. You can take an extra separate subject if you want. So I did, if anyone wants to know, I did chemistry, biology, maths, and fine art as 4, and then I did an AS in further maths when you used to be able to do AS. So chemistry, biology, maths, fine art, and then an AS in further maths is what I took. And I ended up applying to Cambridge, UCL, Imperial, Brighton and Sussex Medical School were my 4 medical schools, because you can only pick 4. And then you have to pick a 5th in something else. And I got into all of my medical schools very, very luckily, which I was pleased for, and I ended up going to Cambridge.
I'm sure there was no luck in that at all, Michael. I'm sorry, it was all about you. Another question that's come off this, and we're talking amongst friends here now. They want to know, what grades did you get within those subjects? You told us your subjects you did.
Okay, so I get this question a lot, and I wish I could see all of you. So sorry, I've said this, if it's okay if I can just clarify, Gareth, that's right. So I work for a lot of the outreach that Cambridge does. So ever since I came from a very kind of working class state school, state comp school background. Both of my parents were on benefits. I was on free school meals. I was in a rough area of East London, and I was very shocked people were shocked that I was applying for Cambridge. So I said to myself, if I ever got in, that I would spend my time trying to help other students get in. And so that's what I'm doing here today. I've been doing it for about 7 years now, 8 years. I've been going in, talking to state school kids, talking to kids from all kinds of backgrounds about how to get into medicine. And so whenever I say the phrase like, oh, I get this question all the time, I really do get this question all the time. I go up and down the country trying to help kids get into Cambridge or into medicine or into top universities or trying to get their top job. This question I don't like because it is not very helpful. If you guys are all budding doctors, budding scientists, I am one data point. So in my medical school, I was one person out of about 360 students who went to Cambridge, out of about 10,000 medical students at that year, out of tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of UK doctors. So I'm just one person, one data point. So it's really hard to generalize, and I don't like generalizing. People still want to know, unfortunately. At GCSEs, I got 13 A stars and 2 A's. And then at A level, I got 2 A stars in chemistry and maths, 2 A's in art and biology for my 4 A levels, and then an A and AS at further maths. But I'd like to caveat that with I'm just one person. There are people who get into medical school with lower grades. There are people that get into medical school with higher grades. There are people who have higher grades and don't get into medical school. That happens actually quite a lot. So I would say the requirement for most medical schools are 3 A's at A level in sciences, or an A star and 2 A's at sciences, or for Cambridge it is 2 A stars and an A for your science A levels. Sorry, that took a little longer, but I just wanted to clarify.
No, thank you very much for that, and thanks for the caveat as well with that one. Related question that's come in for that: what is the most complicated science topic that you needed to learn? With those grades, probably nothing was complicated for you, but
no, definitely there are things that are complicated. Do you mean in all of medical school?
It doesn't stipulate there, but I mean, maybe answer the question in terms of school or GCSEs and A level, if you can think back to that, and then in medical school as well. I mean, the things that you had to learn.
I would say in school, in A levels, I think the hardest thing I had to learn was immunology. So that was your white blood cells, red blood cells, basically trying to understand the different mechanisms in which different cells can find out antigens, find pathogens, either digest them or present them, what network, what pathway that goes down. Actually, that then probably becomes one of the most complicated subjects in school when I had to learn it in Cambridge was pathology immunology, which was a whole plethora of, okay, so here are all of the different cells within your immune system. They interact with each other in these different ways. They then also go through each other through different cytokines, different receptor signals, and in different scenarios they react in this way. There's so much knowledge out there. That was hard. The other thing is genetics. I really did not like genetics. It's very technical. Microgenetics and genetics, it's very technical biology in that different gene sequencing leading to different protein expressions, either their increased or decreased expression or their inhibition, and how that changes the different protein molecular structure of organelles or of macro proteins or of bigger things inside cells. For me, that was very complicated. I was not really a fan of that. But the thing with medicine is that you have to learn it all. Most people will be good at certain things and not good at certain things, but if you're a doctor, you can't say, oh, I didn't like that bit in school, so therefore I didn't learn it. You kind of have to know it all. So part of what you do from GCSE and from A level, I understand that there are things that you like and things that you don't like. That's cool. Show us the things that you like, but also show us that even on things that you don't like, you're still good at learning them and you can still power through, because that's still really important as well.
Okay, but a couple of questions that have come in now about, and I'm thinking back to when you were doing your exams. What was your revision techniques? How did you remember all of the things that you needed to remember? Have you got any tips specifically around exams that you can share with our attendees today?
Sure. I am going to let you guys know now that for me, how to revise is a question or a challenge that you will always be doing. If you guys know anything about the medical field and how much learning you have to do, how much you're constantly learning, you will realize that you will be revising for a large part of your life. So if you do not like exams, then this is a tough career to be in. So my revision technique has changed from when I was in secondary school to when I was in university to now, because I'm still revising now. I'm still having to do exams now, which is fine and part of the job, but there is no one exact answer. All you have to realize is that whilst you're revising, as long as your revision technique just keeps getting better, you'll be getting better. And I didn't realize until I got to university, when I really struggled with some of the exams, I found some of them really, really hard. And some of you might be thinking, oh, but you had these amount of A stars at GCSE and you had these amount of A stars at A level. And I was like, yep. And I still found it hard. It never gets easier. Actually, for a slight tangent, in my 5th year, I actually had a really big knock to my confidence and I had failed one of my exams. And I was asked to sit and repeat that year as well. It's not something that I admit to very, very many people, but it just goes to show that I'm very much human, as much as every other doctor, as much as any other medical student. So it's hard when you're applying to medicine and everyone expects you to be perfect, because you need really good grades and really good work experience and a really good personal statement and really good reference, and everything needs to be really good. That there's a lot of demand on you, and so it's okay to get stuff wrong. It's okay that you're not perfect, as long as you're someone who is constantly trying to get better. I would say that that is the most important thing about revision. In terms of my own advice specifically about revision, don't underestimate what works for you. try not to copy other people, spend time trying to figure out what works for you. I spent time in the library because everyone was in the library and everyone needs to go to the library to study. And then I realized I hate the library. I hate it so much. It's so quiet. It's so stressful. Kind of having everyone silently revising wasn't helpful for me. And it took me until university to realize that I actually revise better when I'm in a cafe, or I'm in a open space, or if I'm in the bit of the library where people are allowed to talk. I like noise around me. I have headphones in and I like listening to pop songs and chart songs and R&B songs because that keeps me going. And everyone's like, oh, how can you revise when there's lyrics in the song? And I was like, it works for me. It definitely works for me. And for me, it was listen to what your body needs. If your body wants you to take a break, it's actually sometimes better to break and come back. And so do that and try and find an interest in what you're doing. Revising, what got me through is trying to make it interesting. Why do I like this subject? What's interesting about this subject? Because interesting things are always easier to remember. If you think, oh, actually, I find how it affects the human body and how it makes symptoms interesting, then go with that, start with that. Or I really like how you understand kind of the fundamental basics of how a concept works. So knowing how cells work fundamentally, I find really interesting because you can kind of then work out how everything else works. Find out what you find interesting and use that to power your revision. Also, if you find nothing interesting, if you find none of it interesting, if you don't like any of the chemistry, any of the biology, and none of it interests you, medicine might not interest you. And that's okay. And that's absolutely fine. So
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, well, thank you. That's a very, very good answer. And I'm sure there's some tips and techniques that you just explained there, and perhaps that critical thinking about how you learned and how we all learn in slightly different ways, I think is the really key point to come out of that answer that you've just given us there. I'm being inundated with questions, and they're all really, really fantastic questions. So I'm going to apologise in advance if I don't ask these questions directly as you've typed them in, but I hope that we can cover all of them there. So we're going to try and do this logically. So you've spoken about your school subjects that you did that's in A level. Now you've told us that you went to Cambridge. So what was it about Cambridge as a direct question that's come in? Why did you choose Cambridge instead of Oxford? And can you talk us through the other medical schools that you had applied for and why you chose them perhaps ahead of other ones?
Fair. Okay, fine. I was someone who in school, I don't know if anyone here has been to Hackney or is originally from Hackney. There are bits of Hackney that I love, but when growing up in Hackney, I wanted to leave. And I don't know any of you guys some of you might love your hometown, some of you might love the area you grew up in, and there are bits of Hackney that I really like, but part of me was, I was like, I saw so many people stuck in one place, and I saw so many people in jobs that they didn't like, and I saw so many people who were just not enjoying their life, that for me, my big thing was I need to leave. I need to go and explore, and I need to do something cool, and I need to do something interesting, because if I don't try now, I'm gonna stay here and end up being like a bartender, and that's fine, absolutely fine if that's what I want to do, but I wanted the option to go somewhere else. So I was like, okay, I'm going to aim as high as I can. And people were saying, oh, you're applying for medicine. Why apply for Cambridge? Why make it harder for yourself? Why make it tougher? And I would say that medicine's already hard. You applying for medicine is already difficult. You might as well just gun it. Just go for the hardest of the hard, all right? There's no point aiming so high then aiming just below it. There's no point. I was like, if I'm going to be smart enough, I'm going to see if I am going to be smart enough to go for Cambridge. It's one choice out of 4. Who cares? Give it a go. And let's see how it goes. All right. The first thing that I did was that me being very, I would say cocky. I was a cocky little kid. And I was just like, I'm just going to get the league table of the medical schools, go from the top and apply to the top medical schools I see, basically. So at the time, the top medical schools were Cambridge, Oxford, UCL, Imperial. So I was like, okay, I can't apply for both Cambridge, Oxford, so I'll pick those three. And then one of the high-ranking ones who was nearby-ish, not too far away, was Brighton and Sussex Medical School. So why did I look at Oxbridge? I'll first go over, was it's known as one of the best medical schools. I knew that I personally really like the technical side of medicine. So I like knowing why things work. I was that kid who, when I was in school, anytime I got taught anything, I was like, but why? But why did that happen? When I was a little kid, when I was like 5 or 6, my sister and my parents would get so annoyed because I would always be like, but why? Why is it this way? Why does the like Earth rotate in the way it does? Why do planes fly? Why does ice float when it's frozen and looks more solid than water? Why? I wanted to know why. And Oxford and Cambridge are great universities at telling you why of medicine. It's really interesting to not just learn you don't just learn how to treat cancer, you learn what is cancer. Why does the cells work in the way it works? What happens when the cell goes wrong? What happens when it goes wrong to the point of turning into cancer? How does it turn into cancer to make it spread, to make you have symptoms, to affect different parts of your body? Knowing how this works, why does chemotherapy work? Why does our medicines work? Why was the big teaching point of Oxbridge, and that's what I loved about it. Between Oxford and Cambridge, I chose Cambridge for 2 reasons. One, because it allowed you to do an intercalation in anything you wanted. So an intercalation, if for you who don't know, is an extra year in your medical degree for you to do an extra degree. So you do 1 more year, do that 1 more year in a specialty subject, and you get a degree in that subject. In Cambridge, you can do it in anything. In Oxford, you can only pick 1 of 5. And so I didn't want to only pick 1 of 5. I wanted to pick anything. So I went for Cambridge. And the other thing was that Cambridge did full body anatomy dissections, which means that in your first year, you get a dead body. You and 5 other people get 1 dead body to yourself for the whole year, and you spend the whole year cutting it up, and that's how you learn anatomy. Whereas Oxford didn't do that. And because I want to be a surgeon, I found that really useful. I also loved the city. I loved the kind of vibe of it. And I felt like I wanted something big and nerdy and kind of Harry Potter-esque and grand and traditional and just cool. And so I thought, why not? This little inner city East London Hackney kid, why can't I be fancy and go sit in a big hall with a nice dinner and get to wear robes and get to be in a cool castle, basically? So that's why I picked it. In terms of UCL, Imperial, and Brighton Sussex Medical School, they all teach in a very similar style, very traditionalist, and I would say that worked well for me. If you're thinking about all medical schools, you could be traditional, like these medical schools, or you could be systems-based, or you could be integrated. So some schools had you going into hospitals from day 1, and you kind of do hospital work and study the science behind it at the same time. Cambridge did it in 2 halves. You do the book work, you never step inside a hospital for 3 years, you just study the science, and then you go into the hospital. And I prefer it that way. Some people like going into the hospital straight away. I personally, when I was 18 years old with A-level biology, and you told me to go into the hospital and talk to patients, and they're like, oh, you're a medical student, why do I have a pheochromocytoma in my body? And I'll be like, I don't know. A-level biology did not prepare me for this. And so I didn't think going into the hospital from day 1 would be useful. I wanted to be a normal uni student and study in lectures and know the groundwork so that when I started the hospital work, I'd have a better grounding in it. And that worked for me.
Yeah. And
Sorry,
presumably whilst Cambridge and Oxbridge will always be those market leaders, and they'll be the top of the table in Imperial and UCL, but there's obviously lots of different medical schools that are out there and available. And did you know all the information that you just said, the reasons why you chose Cambridge? Is that something you were able to research before you applied, or is that something that you found subsequently? And I guess, what tips would you give to everyone else who wants to pick a medical school? Was that information readily available?
So it is hugely readily available, and actually you guys have a huge a bit of an advantage because not every university in the UK does medical school. So there's only 30-ish, which sounds like a lot, but there are over 120 universities in the UK. So having only 30 to go over is fine. Kind of, there are grouped into different styles. So some are very old and some are very traditional. Some are newer and have an integrated approach. That information is all readily available. And then there's other things that you have to think about, like do you like the city? Do you want to be in a big city like London or Manchester or Edinburgh, or do you want to be maybe somewhere smaller like Oxford and Cambridge, or do you want to be out more rural, for example, if you want to go to Peninsula or Kiel? The different, so for me, I kind of got London, and then imagine if I was in a car for 2 hours, drew a circle around London that big and said, okay, that's probably how far I want to go. I want to be far enough away that my parents don't visit every weekend, but I want to be close enough that I could visit when I wanted to. So that was my kind of idea behind that. The other thing is about money as well. So my family are not very well funded and not very well supported. We're a pretty poor family, and neither of my parents were doctors, and so I wanted a medical school that also gave funding support as well. And actually, Cambridge is the cheapest medical school to go to. They have so much money. It's a very, very rich university, but they have so much money that they actually have so many grants and so many bursaries. And that was not something I knew completely. I looked it up a bit when I was applying, but then I had picked Cambridge, and then I looked in a little deeper and I realized that they actually do have a lot of funding. And I was like, oh, this is useful. And so I would really recommend that. It's all on each university's website. You can order a prospectus for free. So go on the university websites that you like. You can order one online and they will deliver you a prospectus, or they have online prospectuses that you can go through. And I just kind of shortlisted universities based on their location, what style of teaching they had, and how good they were, as where they came in the rankings, and then started from there. But to be honest, if you're good enough to if you're a university and you're good enough to have a medical school, you're a pretty good university. So all medical schools are pretty good. So if you get into one, you can't really go wrong.
Okay, a few questions come in around your preparation for applying for university. So a few on your personal statement there. I mean, what tips would you give to people, about writing your personal statement, and what sort of things did you include, or would you recommend that students wanting to apply for medical school would put in a personal statement? What are the sorts of things that they could be loading up on now in terms of work experience, voluntary, extracurricular activities?
Sure. Okay, so I'm gonna take this question, and I know I'm going to kind of combine it with other questions. So you asked me about what can go in a UCAS form. I get this question a lot. I keep saying this, I get this question a lot. And it's very similar to how can I prepare for my UCAS form? How do I prepare for UKCAT and BMAT? How do I prepare for the interviews? And basically, people are asking me, how do I get into medical school? Like, what is it that gets me into medical school? So I'm going to answer them all in one umbrella term. And guys, feel free to ask anything about the career as well. I know lots of you are really interested in this, but I want you guys to have a bit of an idea also about the different, what's it like at medical school and what's it like as a career, because it leads on to my one piece of advice. So here's my big piece of advice for every single medical applicant, all right, I want you guys to hear. When you are applying, you are usually asking yourself two main questions. And I get these two main questions, which is, do I want to be a doctor, or do I want to go into medical school? And how do I get into medical school? So everyone's asking me, what's it like being a doctor? Do you enjoy it? What's it like going into medical school? What is the job like? What's the good things about the job? What are the bad things about the job? And then after that, they think, okay, how do I get into medical school? What work experience do I need to have? How do I write a personal statement? All of this stuff. You will be battling with those two concepts for a long time. For me, I was going through those two concepts all the time. Do I want to do this? And how do I get in? Do I want to go and be a doctor? How do I be a doctor? For me, I think it's much more important for everyone to combine those two questions. And what I mean by that is, for me, when I try and figure out if I want to do this job, I have to think about what practically will help me decide I want to be a doctor. So what can you do as a secondary school student to decide, do I want to be a doctor? I want to know what it's like day to day. Well, then I'm going to go and do work experience and go talk to doctors. I want to know the best and worst things, so I talk to doctors about that. I do different kinds of work experiences. I go online, I read up about it, I read books about it. I want to hear what it's like being a doctor. I know that you have to be really good at sciences, so I'm going to study my sciences. Are there bits of sciences I find really interesting? Are there things in the A-level curriculum that I really like? Are there things outside of the A-level curriculum that's not being taught in schools that I really enjoy? I'm going to read this up. I'm going to go into this. Do I like the different universities? Well, I'm going to go visit them and I'm going to go see if I enjoy them or not. All of these things I did because I wanted to know if I wanted to be a doctor. I didn't do it for my parents. I didn't do it for medical schools and them deciding my application. I did it for me. I was very, very selfish about this. I want you guys to do that work for your own benefit. And that should be all of what you're doing at this time. I'm going to read these books because I want to read it. I'm going to learn these things from BBC Health News because I want to know about it. What gets me interested in medicine? What you then realize is that through doing all of that, from doing it because you're being curious and interested, you're going to end up doing lots of stuff for your personal statement. You end up going to do lots of stuff for your interviews and for your applications. I wanted to know and learn about the ethical dilemmas in being a doctor because you're going to have to do it when you're being a doctor. So I read up about ethical dilemmas. I spoke to doctors. What are the ethical issues about being a doctor? Do you find it hard to make these decisions? I did it because I wanted to know. And then when I got to my interview, they asked about it. And I didn't read those books because I knew they were going to come up in my interview. I read those books because I wanted to do it. And so if you think about it that way, no one can argue with you. No one can complain that you did the wrong thing or you're not doing the right thing because you're doing it for yourself. And it will always, always go and feed into your application. You spend all of your time working out, do I want to be a doctor? In the process of working it out, you create a great CV and a great application for being a doctor. And if by everything, if you do all of the work experience and the book work and you try and work out, do you want to be a doctor? And at the end of it, you realize you don't want to be a doctor. That's also really good. It is really, really good if you do all of your research and realize you don't want to be a doctor, because that was a worthwhile experience. Because if you realize you don't want to be a doctor, you shouldn't take it as early as possible. People realize too late and leave, and then it's a waste of time. So therefore, it's never a waste of time to figure out if you want to do the career. Everything you do feeds into all the things you use to apply to medical school. So if you think about those two concepts feeding into each other, then that is the best piece of advice I can give you. And just start. Just start. I get so many kids asking me, where do I start? What books to read? What should I look up on the internet? Where do you start with your UCAS? Where do you start with your personal statement? Where do you start with your interview? There's no perfect answer, so just start. Starting with anything is better than starting with nothing. And that's the big, big piece of advice I give you there.
Good. No, I hope that answers a lot of your questions that have come in there in terms of your preparation around statements. Another question here, and it touches on something that you mentioned earlier when you spoke about the grades that you got and how some people may get in with lesser grades than that and others will get in with more than that. Why would someone with really, really high grades still not get accepted into medical school? What would be the sorts of things that medical school would be looking for in addition to your grades? Because clearly the grades are very important, but what else is important to them?
This is a really, really good question. So whoever asked this question, very good question. It's very clever, because you see it all the time in the newspapers where it's like, my daughter got 5 A stars at A-level and Cambridge still rejected her. Yes, that does happen. We get loads of people with straight A stars or straight A's who get rejected because we're looking for more than just grades. All right, you guys, all of you guys are more than just A-level grades. You're all really interesting people with different ideas, different ways of learning, different motivations to do your degree. You're not just an A-level score. You're better than that. You're more than that. So give yourself credit that we try to look for more than that. the biggest thing that we look for in medicine is, are you two things? Are you going to be a good medical student, and are you going to be a good doctor? They're very similar, slightly different, but they're very, very similar. Okay. For Cambridge, we look at it as, are you going to be a good doctor, and are you going to be a good medical student here in Cambridge to be a good doctor? We get loads of people who are going to be great doctors, but they are not going to do well in Cambridge. Now, to be a good doctor, I'll answer that question first. Some people who get straight A stars, and that's great. They're really, really smart, but they might not know anything about the medical career. They have no idea what it's like to be a doctor. They have no idea about the stresses and the choices that you have to be. They don't understand how the hospital works. They don't understand what it means to be a day in the life of a doctor. They don't understand all of the things that are difficult with being a doctor. If someone doesn't understand what it's like being a doctor, then they shouldn't be a doctor. And so we get really smart straight A students who got told that they should apply to medicine because they're really smart, but they don't understand the bad bits about being a doctor. So when it gets to the bad bits, when they become a doctor, they're just going to drop out and they're going to struggle. We have people who don't understand how to empathize with other people and therefore can't empathize with patients. There are people who don't really like working in teams and working with others, which you do all the time. There are people who don't really understand the gray areas and topics. There is no black and white. It's really hard to be black and white in medicine. You have to understand that every different scenario is special and unique, and you have to consider each factor within those cases. You could be the brightest person in your school or in the country, but if you don't understand all of these really important things of being a doctor, then you won't make a good doctor, and it will be unsafe for you to give you a place at medical school. So we look for if you're going to be a good doctor. The thing about if you're going to be a good medical student is if you're going to be a good medical student at the uni you're applying for. So for Cambridge, you have to be really clever, but you also have to be very, I'll say, bright. The difference is that not only are you very good and very smart right now, but are you very smart to learn new things quickly? Because that's what Cambridge likes. We don't want you to just be clever now. We want you to be clever to the point where you learn things really, really quickly. The reason for that is because we want you to learn new things that's never been taught before, that you can work out on your own, you can problem solve on your own, so that we can make new and better medicine. In Cambridge, we try to make doctors who aren't just going to practice medicine, they're going to change the practice of medicine. Cambridge doctors are meant to be the doctors who are meant to make medicine better, do research, make new drugs, cure new diseases. That's what Cambridge medicine likes to do. So for that, you have to be really clever at stuff you don't know, which is a really hard thing to test. And so we try to test it in interviews. I've been in the interview for Cambridge, and I've seen really clever students come in who, when given a problem they've never seen before, just break down, can't answer it, can't engage with it. And so for us, we're like, well, if you break down at a problem that you don't know the answer to now, when you get to medical school, you're going to break down at a lot of problems because there are lots of things that you won't know. And so you'll be great to maybe learn somewhere else where they teach you everything from the book and all you have to do is memorize stuff. But we'd rather pick people who are good at problem solving and learning new stuff really quickly. And that's really hard to teach, but it's something that we have to look for.
Yeah,
sorry.
No, okay, no,
Again, long answer.
thank you.
My bad.
That's really good. I'm conscious of time. I did want to wrap this up in the next 10 minutes or so, and there are so many questions that are coming in. What I'm going to propose we do, Michael, is that once we finish recording this one, that perhaps you and I just record a separate session, which we'll also put on the Hot page via YouTube, where I can ask all the questions that have come in that perhaps haven't been answered. But just to sort of cover the time that we've got left, I'm going to try and incorporate as many of the questions that have come in as possible, because there's such good questions that are coming in. I mean, giving the example of your grandmother, who you described as being quite a difficult patient for doctors to deal with. during your education in medical school, you're learning about how cells work, about immunology, about diagnosis. But to what extent are you also learning about how to empathise with patients, how to deal with difficult people, how to work as part of a team? Which I'm guessing, is that all part of that training and course and learning?
It is, yes. So medical school is long. Medical school is at least 5 years if you're an undergraduate, maybe 6. Even if you're a postgraduate, it's 4 years. So it's a long degree because there's so much we have to pack into it. You need to know all of the sciences behind it, why everything in the body works, why everything affects the body, affects the way it does, why does our medicine work, all of this stuff, as well as learning all of the other skills that come with it. You need to learn all the practical skills. You need to learn how to take blood, how to do observations, how to examine a person. You need to understand how to do stitches. You need to understand how to read x-rays, how to read ECGs. You have to understand how to talk to people. You learn how to take a history. You learn how to talk to difficult people. You learn how to deal with crying and upset people. You learn how to do all of this in a 10-minute consultation, and you have to learn how to work in teams. You learn how to do research. You learn so much in medical school. It's a great place to learn all of this, but it's all covered in your medical school. Different universities do it in different ways. Cambridge does it in a way which we provide actors and acting scenarios to teach this stuff. So for an afternoon, we go into a room where there's a few of us and an actor. The actor pretends to be an angry patient, and you have 2 minutes to calm this person down. And if you can't do it, or if it's too hard, you can be like, time out, and the actor will kind of go back to neutral, and we'll talk through what you could do to make it better. So it's actually quite a cool, useful way to learn how to do it, so that when we go out into the world and they say, oh, you now need to tell this family that their grandmother is dying, do you mind doing it? You can get asked that on your first day of work, and it's hard, but hopefully you've had a little bit of training to kind of get you through.
Yeah. No, okay, all right. I'm going to ask you to answer these questions as succinctly and concisely as you can, just because we're going to start wrapping up very shortly. So firstly, a number of questions have come in about resources and books that you might recommend people read. Someone recommended the book This Is Going to Hurt by Adam Kay. Any other books or medical journals that you think our attendees should pay some attention to?
Sure. Any book that you find relevant, any book that you find interesting is an interesting book. There is no correct book. I'd much rather you read a book that you actually read than say a popular one that you didn't actually read. This Is Going to Hurt by Adam Kay. There's also Trust Me, I'm a Junior Doctor by Max Thompson, Blood, Sweat and Tea, which is one about ambulance services. There's lots of different kinds. Literally pick any of them, and it's better than nothing.
Okay, brilliant. There's a few questions that have come in around work experience. I'm not going to ask you this one directly, Michael, but what I do know is that there is a fantastic website that's out there. This is by the West Essex and Hart's Academy Care Trust in Hertfordshire. So this will be relevant for, I think, for all of you, just for some background knowledge. What I need to tell you, though, I've been asked to tell you, is that due to the current pandemic that we're in, work experience and voluntary positions aren't going to be available probably until September at the earliest. But the website that you're seeing on your screen here, maybe take a picture of the QR code and that will get you back into it. But there's lots of really good information on there, a lot of which I think will supplement the things that Michael has spoken to you about earlier today. So do have a look at those, and we'll make sure that they are available for you as well. Final, oh, sorry, I know you.
Yeah, just very quickly about work experience. Please, I know it's really hard. Get anything you want. It doesn't have to be with a doctor. It doesn't have to be in a surgery or in a GP practice or in a hospital. You work in a care home. You work in a charity. Anything to do with providing care. You're working with disabled children in a school. Anything is good experience if you're getting practice in a caring role. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. That's a really good answer. And then I'm going to ask you to finish up with this question: is can you talk us through your day or your week or even a shift? Talk us through your last shift that you did for us, and just explain some of the things that you did.
Sure. So some of you might be thinking, why am I here at 2 o'clock in the afternoon? I've actually just finished a night shift. So I started work at 8 p.m. last night, I finished at 9 o'clock this morning. I have to switch back onto days. So I'm now trying to keep myself awake so that I can sleep tonight and then go back into regular day. So that's really typical of being a doctor. A typical day, if I was a normal day, is I would go into the hospital, I would be in a certain area, and my job would be with my boss, go around and see each of the patients, check that they're okay. I might see them on my own, I might see them with my boss. I would ask them some questions of how they're feeling. I'll get a general idea of what their problem is. Do we know what their problem is? Are we still trying to figure it out? Are we looking up tests? Are we giving treatment? And then I'll spend the afternoon trying to chase those things up. The thing that is about a night shift, though, is that you're not seeing every single patient. All you're doing is firefighting. So if anyone goes ill or anyone becomes sick overnight, it is you. You are the person who goes sees, and you are the person who goes and fixes them and figure out what's wrong with them. Every day is different. Every day is really exciting. Every day is a challenge, both in terms of your stress and in terms of challenging your knowledge. But I would say that I really quickly want to say that it is something which each day you are going to be doing something useful, no matter what it is. Your typical day can be stressful and long. And to wrap up this session, I kind of want to say that that is sometimes the best thing. That is the best thing about being a doctor. In terms of what's the best and worst thing about being a doctor, the best thing about it is that you might not be getting paid as much as your friends who are equally as good grades as you. You might not be doing some stuff which is in a city or in a bank, but everything you do every day, you see it being useful. Every job you take, every task you fulfill, every day I can come home and say, you know what, it's stressful, it's tiring, I got really upset or really angry or really happy, but every day I'm doing something that I can see is beneficial. And that's one of the nicest things about being a doctor that no real other career can really do for you, is that I can see my effect on the community, and that's lovely. Probably the worst thing is that the expectations of you can be really hard. Do not underestimate what it's like being a doctor. It is tough, it is stressful. People expect you to do so much, to be so clever and so hardworking and so diligent and so ethical and so empathetic. So it is a really, really demanding job, but when you get to do it, when you get to fulfill that job, it's one of the best careers in the world. And it might sound cheesy, but if I was to go back to your age and pick all again, I would pick this job again and again, even with everything that's happening with the coronavirus and everything that's happening and all the stresses of it. I'll come back and I'll do this all again. So yeah, that's kind of what a typical day is. And also the typical day is sometimes the best and worst thing about this job. And I hope you guys really, really consider it. If you guys do have any more questions, please pop them over to Gareth and we'll try and record everything. I will answer as many questions as you guys send over. And anything that is a bit more directed, Gareth can send over to me. And I hope you found this really useful. It's been fantastic talking to you guys, and I hope you really consider it.
No, thank you, Mark. We've just launched another poll at the moment, which most of you have voted on, just saying now that you've listened to some of the things that Michael's had to say to you, do you now feel better informed about the things you need to do to pursue this career? So thank you for voting on that one. This one's come in a couple of times, actually. I think I know what it means. What do you do in your foundation years? Just again, if you give me a sort of 30-second answer on that one.
Sure.
Michael.
You, in your foundation years, you rotate between 6 4-month placements between different specialties to kind of get you a taste of what each of the specialties are like. So you do 4 months in surgery, 4 months in cardiology, 4 months in respiratory, 4 months in A&E, 4 months in obs and gynae. You do these 4-month blocks in a range of stuff to improve your skills, get you a good taste of everything, and hopefully help you decide on a specialty which you do after your foundation year. And what I would end up doing is picking, for example, general surgery after this. So that's what your foundation.
Okay, brilliant. I've had a couple of questions. Well, same question coming from the same person. What was the website that we just showed you? So Mia, I think she's still online in the background with us. We could just put up the slide again with that website address that we put on with the West Essex and Hart's Academy. The other one that I recommend that you all look at is the Central NHS careers website, which is called Step Into the NHS. That's a really, if you just Google Step Into the NHS, that will give you very good general information about careers within the NHS. So just have a look at that screen at the moment, Hertfordshire and West Essex Health and Care Academy. My understanding is if you were to take a picture of the QR code that's at the bottom of that screen, that should take your browser directly to that one. So if you want a moment just to screen grab that, do so now. The final question I'm just going to ask everyone listening or watching at the moment is, just want to ask you how inspirational you think this session has been in terms of wanting to go into medicine. So 5 being that this is, you now know this is definitely the career for you. Perhaps some of you realise that it perhaps isn't the career for you, and that's equally fine as well. So that poll is out there now. Thank you for those of you voting on that one. Final thing just we wanted to say in wrapping up is that this broadcast has been recorded. It will go live and it will go onto be available via a YouTube video via the Hop page, which is www.hopinto.co.uk. Let me just close the poll now. And overwhelmingly, Michael, you'll be pleased that people are saying that they're very inspired by the things you've told them today, and this is definitely the career for them. Nice. The screen slide that you've got available to you now, if you click on that QR code, then that will take you directly to the YouTube video that will be available probably later this afternoon, certainly by tomorrow morning. And I think that Michael and I will probably record a follow-up session to this one as well, which we'll then put on, and we'll answer all the questions that you put in there, because they'll still be available for us. So thank you ever so much to all of you for attending and for taking part and submitting your questions. So I really apologise that we weren't able to answer them all directly, but there was just such a brilliant range of questions that were coming in, and I'm sure you'll agree that the answers Michael were giving you were so detailed that they were really worth listening to in their entirety. Thank you as well to all your careers leaders and your teachers at school who have forwarded you the details of this. We run live webinars once a week at the moment. Next week with a slight change in direction, we're going to be looking at construction next week. All the other previous ones we've done, I think the most related ones we've done, we did one on physiotherapy a few weeks ago, and we've also run one on life sciences and pharmaceuticals as well. They're all available via that Hop Into page on there on our virtual encounters. So Michael, finally from me, thanks ever so much to you for giving up your time, for trying to fit us in the middle of trying to recalibrate your body clock for your day shifts that are starting tomorrow. It's been a real pleasure to hear from you and to be able to interact with you today. Enjoy the rest of your day, everybody else. Best of luck with all of your studies, and I hope that many of you will be very successful going into the medical career, and possibly we will we'll see you and hear from you in months and years.
Best of luck to everyone. No, thank you for having me, and it's been an absolute pleasure. And good luck everyone, all the students out there. It's a tough slog. It's the start of a big journey, whether you choose to go to medicine or not. I hope you found this useful, and really, honestly, there's so much choice out there that it's actually a really exciting time to get into whatever career. But if you choose medicine, we'd love to have you.
Sure. Okay. Thanks ever so much. One more, I'm just going to read this out because it might be really relevant and important for some people on here. Can you please mention to everyone about the Brighton and Sussex Medic School online work experience? I don't know anything about it. I can't substantiate that. It's just come in. Someone's recommended it, so perhaps you want to as well. So the Brighton and Sussex Medic School online work experience. I'm sure if you just Google that, you will find that. But from us and from Michael, thanks ever so much. See you again soon.
All right.